I've got a really cool, well, Nick and I both have a really cool experience that we're going to share with the audience today, which is something we've never, ever done before. I've never done it in the 20 years of selling real estate, and I've never done it in the last 8 years of coaching real estate agents. And Nick and I are going to share that experience on today's episode. And then, like we always do, we'll leave about 15 minutes of Q&A time so that for those of you in the live audience, if you have questions for Nick based on this experience that he and I are going to share, you can do that. So first off, Nick, appreciate you carving out some time to do this, to pour back into the community. Truly, thank you.
Yeah, of course. No, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So why don't I do this? I'm going to tee up essentially what we did, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, that was very, very unique. So the idea was this. The idea was, and Nick, I know you know this, so this will be more for the audience, but the whole idea was, how do we create a mindset that allows us to, A, truly detach from the outcome when we're prospecting? Because we carry so much emotional head trash into prospecting, and what if they say this, and what happens here, and because of that, I don't prospect as consistently, and because of that, I don't ask the questions I really, really, really want to say. And so what we did is we had a challenge that rewarded rejection. So instead of getting the reward around generating a lead or setting a listing appointment, et cetera, we said, what would actually happen if we had a little contest, and that contest went for, what was it, 2 or 3 days, Nick?
It's 3 days.
3 days. We did a 3-day contest, and we said, what if we rewarded the person who had the most prospects not say yes, but actually say no when we ask for an appointment? What would happen? How would behavior change? Would the person do more prospecting? Would the person have any changes in the conversations they were having? And Nick, you're going to help us unpack the answers. So I guess let's start here. Let's talk about like before the no challenge and after the no challenge. So give the audience some context of, I don't know how much you're willing to share with what things were like before you got into this challenge, and maybe some of the challenges you had when it comes to prospecting. And then we'll talk about what you learned after this contest. Is that fair?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, so I've really been a real estate agent full time only since about April this year. So I quit my full-time job earlier in the year to just, kind of burn the boats and give it a real go. I really started like going deeper in prospecting. I want to say like kind of mid-July. And I was doing about 20 calls, the conversations a day, which was for my business plan and my market, that was sufficient. And I was doing okay. I mean, I was reaching a point where I was setting pretty consistently 1 to 2 appointments a week. I mean, I don't want to make excuses or anything. My market is a challenge. I'm in San Jose, Silicon Valley, so there's a lot of competition. So I've had a hard time. I mean, I have set a number of appointments. I've had some very good conversations with leads, but I haven't had any listings yet. And it's been an uphill battle. So when this challenge happened, I was, you laid it out, and I was like, well, listen, I'm really good at getting rejected.
So good.
I'm not going to have issues getting rejected. If we want to go, let's go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah. So so you were doing 20, I just want to clarify, 20 dials per day or 20 conversations per day?
Conversations.
Okay. So you're right. I mean, that's pretty darn good. And as a result of those 20 conversations per day, you were setting 1 or 2 appointments per week. Those appointments were those, how would you classify those appointments? And by the way, I'm not sure if this is for you or not. You can decide. But if you're a real estate agent, you're watching this video and you're not earning at least $100,000 per year, you feel like you're overworked, you're underpaid, maybe even underappreciated, perhaps it's time to talk. If you're serious about growing your real estate sales business and you're open to having a conversation to determine if working with me as your coach makes sense or not, then click the link in the description beneath this video or simply go to reverseselling.com to book a call.
Well, so that's, yeah, kind of, I would say probably half were preview and half were listing. And that's more just skills and me not being in the game. I mean, really, I've only been doing this for 3 or 4 months now. Um, so I'm kind of realizing looking back that like I wasn't doing enough to kind of qualify the appointments over the phone. Because there were a few I showed up with like a full-on listing presentation. They were like, dude, I got 10 minutes. What's going on?
Ah,
But then there were a few that were like legit listing appointments. I'd say like probably 50-50.
got it. Okay. And what would you say was maybe your biggest challenge before the contest? What would you, if you were to explain the challenges of lead generation and prospecting to maybe an agent who is just getting started, Nick, how would you explain it? Like the challenges of it that you were having.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had fear of rejection. I think that's a big part. I mean, when we have newer people joining the community and they ask, my first day of prospecting is tomorrow. What should I, my first comment on the post is like, you're going to be terrible at this. Like, and I don't mean to like discourage you. Like,
Right.
it's going to suck. Like it, and that's okay. Like we were all there. Um, and I'm still kind of there, right? I'm still relatively new to this, still learning a lot. Um, so yeah, I think fear of rejection is like the big thing.
That's right. And that's what this whole experiment that we did, Nick, was all about was can we manufacture an environment that would actually trick the mind, that would eliminate the fear of rejection.
Mhm.
And so now let's talk about it. So talk about you going through this 3-day contest, what it was like, what the experience was like, and then some of the ahas you had along the way.
Yeah. Well, actually, before we get into that, I kind of want to queue up because so we had the call the week before to go over all the rules of the challenge and everything. And what I wanted to do was like, I was on that call, and after I got off it, I was just like, I want to win this thing. Like, I want to, I don't know what it is about this challenge, but like, I got to win this challenge.
Mm.
And so one of the things I did was I actually spent the whole weekend reading through every single book that you recommended on that call. So that was Go for No and Rejection Proof. And I started Be Your Future Self Now as well. But I listened to the audiobook Go for No 2 times through, listened to all of Rejection Proof. That's the guy who had his 100 days of rejection challenge.
That's right.
And I was just like, I gotta get this in my head if I want to take this seriously. So that was one thing I did. And then the other thing I did was I cleared my calendar for those 3 days. I was like, any appointment, any like when normal, and we'll kind of get into this more, but like a lot of my normal BS, like spending time working on my website, spending time working on this email or my social page or whatever. I was like, we're not doing any of that Monday through Wednesday next week. We're just gonna call. So I was like I said, I wanted to win this thing. Like, let's give it a real shot. I wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, I left it all on the field. And if it didn't work out, it's fine. I was beat fair and square, but at least I gave it a run.
Let me ask a couple questions about that, because that's a great way to tee this up. And so you said 2 things. One, you read the 2 books that we recommend, which is Go for No, Rejection Proof. Great books. Really helps. Well, did that help with your mindset? Like, what were some takeaways from the book? And then I got another question about something else you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Go for No. Go for No is essentially what this challenge was. I mean, the main thing was, track your no's and try and make all of your goals around no goals. Don't make any goals around yes goals.
That's right.
And so that was very eye-opening. And I was like, all right, well, I mean, that's what this challenge is. Let's just do it.
And the thing there, right, is just that little baby nugget, what you just said, for most people, if they understood, Nick, what you just said and what that entire book is about, it would shift, I believe, their entire approach to prospecting. In that, when we talk about this attachment to the outcome, this attached to how I'm being judged, or this attachment to what am I going to get out of this activity, and we completely detach from that, and we actually make the goal of the activity to seek out and embrace the no and go for the rejection, amazing things happen, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So
Yeah.
we'll let you lead up to that. Okay. And then the second thing you did, or the second thing that you said, is you had this other mindset approach or shift, which was this idea about addition by subtraction. You said for these 3 days, I'm going to only focus on the main thing. And it's not those other things aren't important. They're just not urgent. I'm curious how you came to that conclusion and if that type of thinking has hopefully any long lasting stick to itiveness for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think so I mean part of that is it's come up in your coaching calls a handful of times now, addition by subtraction. And so part of that was just me being like, like, well, shoot, I'm doing all this coaching. Like, why don't I just listen to my coach one time? Uh,
Sure.
but then another part of it was like, I mean, and Gary Keller goes over this in the book, the one thing.
That's right.
He talks about like um, balancing, right? I think we all have this kind of myth of like we want to live a balanced life, and that's not to say like you shouldn't care about your family or your friends or whatever. Don't do any of that. That's to say like there are going to be days and times when we got to put a little more effort here or a little more effort here. It's micro adjustments along the way. And that's okay. Like it's okay to say, I don't need to hit my Instagram page and make any posts for 3 days.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, let's carve out 8 straight hours of prospecting, just for this couple of days, right? Like, so that was kind of where I was like, I don't have to sacrifice to do that. I mean, I do have to sacrifice, but I don't have to give all that other stuff up.
Yeah.
It's a matter of priorities and doing the important things when you need to do them.
That's right. And I love how Gary talks about that in the book, which is what is the one thing that if you were to do it on a consistent basis would change everything? Like that's the question that kept coming up in the book. And that's
Right.
what we talk about vitals. And the vitals in our business is this understanding of talking to your ideal client avatar on a daily basis. And to your point, what most realtors do is they prioritize most things above that thing.
Right.
And somehow they manufacture the story in their head as to why these other things are more important than the main thing. And the main thing is to have conversations with people. So for that 3 days, and hopefully for the rest of your career, you've proved to yourself what is capable when you focus on the vitals and you help to keep yourself clear from distraction. What's actually possible when you really, really hunker down and focus. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so that leads us to this contest. So walk us through what happened next.
Yeah. Well, so one other last thing of prep I did was the night before I just sat down and I wrote down scripts and I wanted to break them down. And I don't know if you remember this, but like on the call the week before, I said, is there any expectation that we follow your scripts or any other scripts or go in all this detail, establish DART framework, yada yada? Or can I just like straight up ask? And you were like, you can do whatever you want as long as you ask and get a no. So I wrote out a bunch of scripts that are just very direct and to the point. Most of them are like, hey, my name is Nick. I'm a realtor. Look, before you hang up, I just had a quick question about the property for rent or for sale or whatever. And they say, okay, fine. And I just say, yeah, I appreciate that. Look, this is a long shot and you're going to think I'm crazy, but would it be an absolute waste of time if we met at your property, you showed me around and we had a conversation about what it would look like to sell it instead of renting it? That was my Furbo script.
It's great.
Just
and
questions.
when I heard that, I'm like, it's not to get too deep into that, but I want to talk about what happened as a result of that, of course. But it got the thinking out of the way probably for you. It got the whole like getting in your own way of like, you just came right out of the gate and asked for what it is that you want. So when you say ask for the audience, it was asking for an appointment. So keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I after doing that 100 times, I kind of was like, God, I've been so mother may I about all this. Like, can we just like
Yeah.
cut the crap and just get to it? Like, we all know I'm calling you. Like, I'm a realtor. Like, let's get to it, Yeah, my circle prospecting script was very similar too. And I would just go, hey, listen, I appreciate that. I'm actually going to be canvassing your neighborhood this weekend. would it be a complete waste of time if I knocked on your door, we introduced, you showed me around the house and we had a conversation about what it might look like to sell down the road, or should I just skip over your house?
Love it.
And you just like you give them the off ramp. Like I was literally just like, I'm trying to get these people to tell me no. Like, and it's funny how it does work. But I also kind of realized something funny, and maybe I don't know if this is my market or if this is just a Northern California thing or if this is just a people thing, but like I had a really hard time getting some people to say no
Mm.
when they really wanted to. And I could hear it being like, oh, I don't know. And I'd be like, listen, you can tell me no. And they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, look,
That's
I
a
get
people
it.
thing. Hold
Yeah,
on. So this is a big insight for the audience. This is what I've been screaming from the mountaintops. That people, honestly, Nick, they think that I am crazy. They think when I come up with it, when I say things like this, that yes lives in the land of no. They think that's like total BS. When I say when you give people the opportunity to tell you no, that it's hard for them to do, versus if you don't give them the opportunity to tell you no, how easy it is for them to tell you no. They
yeah,
think if I make a post like that on Instagram, they think it's honestly like it's just like, yeah. Like but it's you now doing it, understand the psychology of it. Yes.
right. Yeah, I mean, that was a huge revelation. It was just like, look, I'm giving this person every reason to say no. Like, you don't know who I am. I'm a total stranger. I want to see your house. Like, like you can
Please
tell
tell
me
me
no.
no.
I get
Please tell
it.
me no.
Like,
Please tell me no. I need a point. I need a point. And they just
right.
won't tell you no. Now,
Yeah,
that's a huge difference versus going and approaching these conversations with trying to get to yes. Would you
right.
agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, the things that happen when you do that are just so weird. I mean, and that's part of Gia Jang talks about it a lot in the rejection proof book we were talking about. Like he literally like shows up to a dude's house with like cleats and shin guards and a soccer ball, and is like, "Hey, can I play soccer in your backyard?" And like sometimes people just say yes. Like,
That's right.
like, it's wild. Like I don't know. And it just made me realize how much I've been leaving on the table all this time.
Mm.
Like I just I just cut to it sometimes. So I don't know. It was wild.
So that's a huge, huge aha, right? I mean, and
Right.
hopefully people in the audience really get that, is that your attachment to yes is the thing that's why yes keeps eluding these people, is because their attachment to being liked, their attachment to the outcome is the exact reason they don't get what they want.
Hmm.
And so now that you've shifted this approach to actually go for the rejection instead of hide behind the rejection, what was the result of this? What happened?
Yeah, well, so first things first, I made way more calls than I usually do. In three
Because
days, I had 146 conversations, which for me is massive. I mean, that's like tripling my output. Um, and then the other, so my count, I asked for 108 no's or 108 appointments, and 103 people told me no. And you know what? That's fine. I got 5 appointments out of it, man. Like I've never in my wildest dreams had that happen before. Um,
unbelievable. I
yeah.
mean, I hope everyone heard that. So in 3 days, you set 5 appointments in 3 days, where you're used to setting, like you said, 1 appointment per week. And the 5 appointments, tell us about those appointments. Because of your approach, was anything different about them?
Yeah, well, so one of them hasn't happened yet. Uh, Two of them were actually really good. One of them is looking very promising. We have a follow-up appointment because I met and he was like, I actually have these other properties I want to talk to you about. And so now it's like kind of snowballing, which is great. I don't want to jinx it. And and like, I mean, these are some of the easiest appointments I've had. Like, they know what I'm there for.
Exactly. And I
Hang
guess
out
that's
with
my
me.
point. Is not only did you set 5 appointments in 3 days where you're used to setting 1 appointment in a week, but the 5 appointments, you could argue that the quality was better
Hmm.
in addition to the quality or quantity, because the intent was there. because
Right.
the way you've approached the conversation, it wasn't like you set this appointment because they thought you had a buyer or you were just coming to preview the home or you were just beating around the bush. Like it was, we know what you were here to talk about. And so
Mhm.
you did 108, 146 conversations. You asked 108 people to come over to their house to talk about selling. 103 told you no. And as a result, five said, yeah, come on over, Nick. We'd like to have that conversation. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly it. I mean, what is that like? What, 1 in 20 roughly? I
Yeah,
mean, would you get a no 19 times if you got an appointment on the 20th every time? I mean, like,
exactly. That was my next point you just took. That's exactly right. Say that one more time.
yeah, I mean, if you could make 20 calls and ask for 20 no's, that you would get a yes every time you did that. I mean, I'd be doing this all day, every day.
That's right. I mean, we kind of talked about what we think holds people back because of the rejection, but because you shifted and you went for the rejection, and you detached from yes, you actually got more of the yes. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and like, I mean, and I also want to emphasize, like, look, these scripts aren't good. Like, I kind of went really hard, and because for me, like I was saying, I was having the mother may I problem, and so I
Yeah.
was like, what if I just go to the opposite end of the scale here? So I'm kind of bringing it back a little bit and trying to find what that means for me. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, you gotta ask.
Yeah.
And another thing I learned was how many leads I have in my database that just aren't actually leads because I
Ah,
didn't really ask for the appointment, when I had my first call with them. And part of this was I went through all my leads and asked all my previous leads for appointments.
amazing.
And and it hurt at first because at first I was like, okay, you're not a lead. Okay, you're not a lead. And like my database shrank. Um, but then a few of them were like, hey, yeah, I mean, we're getting into the holidays and it's really not a good time, but seriously, call us back in January. And and like you can hear it in their voice. I mean, there's a shift.
Yeah.
Like these people aren't messing around anymore. So yeah, I don't know. It's just I can't I can't
What's amazing. So
emphasize enough.
let me ask you about the lead thing, right? So we didn't even talk about that yet. And to your point, when you say that for the audience that may not know what you mean, what you mean is that what I have taught you is that a lead can only be a lead because you've asked to come over. And what you found was, wow, most of these people that I qualified as leads in my database are not real leads. And at first, it is painful to say, oh my gosh, I don't really have. You were living in hopium, right? That's what we call it. We're living
Yeah,
in this world where we have happy ears. It's like we want to pretend like we're getting traction, but then when the rubber meets the road, we find out, well, we don't actually have that. And we don't ask the questions because we don't want to find out the answer. And so when you asked the question and you had courage to hear the answer, you found out what? The truth. The truth
hmm
was a lot of them were not leads. However, through this process, to your point, you said you found out like, wow, because I had more intent around my communication, I was actually able to find really good opportunities with inside the database that had I not done this, I would have never been able to find them. It'd be like a needle in the haystack, correct?
yeah, absolutely. And I was realizing too, I've been dreading follow-up calls. And that's a huge problem in my business right now is like, I've got a database of like 70, 80 people now after these 3 months of calling. And I haven't been doing the monthly follow-up with the nurtures. I haven't always been doing the weekly, warm lead follow-up because I'm afraid of the like, hey, it's Nick, remember me, just checking in, like, after this challenge, I was like, okay, I need a reset here.
And that's
Um,
another great point. Agents by the thousands, Nick, feel the same way you felt. They don't want to do the follow up call because they don't have a real lead. And so they have
right.
nothing to say. Versus when you generate a lead because you've talked about getting together, like that person you just gave the example of who said, listen, call me back in January. I bet you're counting down the days until calling them back. You're going to have no issue calling them back in January, are you? Because you know exactly what to say because the pretense of the conversation was about getting together, right?
Right. Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to call that guy sooner. I'm probably going to call him in December with like a little market update in his area. Just be like, hey, just wanted to let you know this house sold down the street for blah, blah, blah. Wanted to get your thoughts before our meeting. Something like that, right? Like, because
Yeah.
I know he wants to meet. Like, so it's so easy. It's so much easier when you know they actually want to meet with you.
Yeah. What and we're going to open this up for Q&A in a second. So you guys that have questions, throw that in the Q&A box and then Nick and I will get through those in just a minute. What lead sources are you prospecting? Were you prospecting? And then which ones turned into the actual appointments?
Yeah, so I call expireds canceled every morning right at 8. And so two of them came from that. And then I also call Furbo. We have a lot of for rent by owners in my market, so I've been really working on that. And two came from the Furbos as well. And then I've been, I have to admit, I've been kind of neglecting the circle prospecting thing up until now.
Yeah.
And so I hit circle prospecting pretty hard for this challenge. And I got the one I was telling you about, the one who was like, "Oh, come over and let me see these other houses I have." That dude came from circle prospecting. So
Amazing.
yeah, I
You
mean,
got two from for rent by owners, two from canceled expireds, and then one circle pro. I mean, that's a really nice, diverse set of opportunities for yourself
yeah.
through this. I mean, that's really, really good. I mean, for rent by owners is such a great opportunity. They're all great opportunities, but no, that I was just out of curiosity. I didn't know. Is that who you're still prospecting?
Yeah, for rent by owners is probably I think my main chunk. Because there's usually like a good 30 to 40 every day that come into my market.
Wow. Can I ask about that for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not to get way off on a tangent. I'm not sure if you were on the coaching call yesterday, but we talked about for rent by owners quite a bit. Have you ever considered approaching them to actually list the rental on their behalf for cash flow?
It's I've been kind of still chewing on that. I do remember that on the call from yesterday. Um, it's not a bad idea. I actually find most of them when I call them, the first thing they say is, "No, we're not using an agent to rent." That's like
Sure.
number one thing, and I'm like, "Well, that's actually not why I was calling."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Well, because it's the same conversation as a for sale by owner. Of course, they're going to say that. So
right.
then naturally, I know you don't do this right now, but naturally, if you and I were on a coaching call, I'd ask you to say, well, what would you say if a for sale by owner said that? And so it's the same thing, right? So if you can't get a tenant who's of the highest quality with the best application and call it 2 weeks, then we could talk about what would happen in the future. Like that's how we
Mhm.
might be able to approach it. I just didn't know if you had any, because you get 30 to 40 a day. I mean, they close so fast. And what's the average rent in your area?
I'm afraid to say just for I'm on
Yeah.
the West Coast here, but yeah, I mean it's pretty typical for like a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house that's like 1,400 square feet to be renting for like $4,000 to $5,000, depending on where it is.
Yeah. And so that's our average commission here in my market. So it's
Sure.
like you could do two or three of those a month. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's 10, 15, 20 grand a month easily. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. I just didn't know if you were exploring that or not.
Yeah, I haven't I'm still kind of chewing on it. I mean, now that you put it that way, I'm kind of thinking, well, gosh, maybe I should.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of opportunities. So,
Yeah.
was there any other big ahas? And then we're going to open this up for Q&A that you learned through this challenge that is still with you now? Now that you won the contest, you won the $1,000 contest, right? That went into your account.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. All right. That's good. What's has stuck with you as you prospect every day now?
Yeah, I really realized that I've been kind of missing that mental shift of like really being in the game. I've been kind of in this weird place where I'd be prospecting, I'd be like, okay, I gotta make my 20 conversations, and I just like kind of get through it. And like this challenge, I was like, look, I mean, I want to win this thing and I want to show that I'm actually capable here, right? And so now I'm kind of realizing that like I've had this kind of wrong attitude on all my calls and all my prospecting effort of just like kind of getting through it. And I'm realizing now it's like I want to do the opposite to get through it. I want to like kick it in the ass and then like maybe do more, maybe push myself even more here.
It's
I want to
amazing.
see what I can do. You know,
So,
I can do this. Like, why can't I do this more on my prospecting calls, right?
that's right. So, in other words, instead of approaching prospecting, because one of the questions from Mike is exactly what I just asked you, instead of approaching prospecting with this check in the box mentality, like, okay, I did my 20 contacts for the day. You're actually approaching it to say, how do I actually challenge myself to make the most of every single conversation? And when we say make the most is I'm already on the call. I might as well
Right.
really take the shot. I'm going to just take the shot. I'm not going to worry about whether the ball goes in the basket. I'm just going to shoot every single time. Whereas before, you weren't even taking the shots. Would that be fair?
Correct. 100% correct.
And so that still is with you every day right now?
Yeah, yeah. I'm getting better about it. Yeah, and one other thing I also learned was like if I really put in the effort to shape my environment and my schedule around this, I can also really surprise myself. And so I'm kind of revisiting. I'm in like kind of a competition calibration phase right now where I'm like I'm really trying to like what do I really want out of this? Like now I have this thing now that I really always had, but only just now realizing I had. Like, what do I
The
want this to look
superpower you're
like?
talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of reshaping like, well, maybe it's really, 25, 30 contacts a day that I can make. And maybe I have my contacts as well as like a no goal per day. Like I want to get 10, 15 no's a day,
Yeah.
something like that. And I'm also just like kind of rethinking like and we, not to bash on all these books that you recommended, but I mean, like, be your future self now. One of the things I asked myself going into the week was like, how would the me, sitting on this interview call with you right now feel in the future, right? Like,
Mm,
I want to be connected to that guy. And so now I'm thinking like, I want to be connected to the guy who's selling one, two, four listings a month in, a few years down the road.
sure.
So now I'm like, yeah, so there's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of figuring out how to like make this all work in my business now, and yeah, it's been a ride, just been an absolute ride.
That's great. I mean, I think the biggest thing you just said, and then we're going to open up for 15 minutes of Q&A, is if I could just offer up some insights or some coaching opportunities,
Please,
it's
please.
to do what you said, which is to turn. That's what I was hoping you were going to learn from this. I didn't want to say it. I was hoping you were going to say it, and you said it, and I hope everyone caught it. But I don't know if you actually connected the dots. You still talked about these contacts in a way that was different than the no goal.
Mm,
When we integrate those as the same, that's where exponential growth comes from. So, in other words, instead of approaching prospecting with, hey, here's how many people I want to talk to today, here's how many people I want to have tell me no today.
yeah,
And that is the actual focus. Appointments and leads and listings comes as a byproduct of obtaining rejection. That's the whole entire breakthrough, is to
yeah,
actually every day wake up and say, this is how many people I am actually seeking out to tell me no thank you today. And that is my goal every day. Even if on the fifth one, I don't hit my goal and someone tells me yes, I'm like, all right, fine, I'll set the appointment, I guess. You don't stop with you get it, right? You don't
right,
stop. It's like every day, I want 20 humans to tell me, no, I do not want to meet with you to sell my house. And if you did that every day, you would sell so many houses.
yeah,
That is the breakthrough.
yeah. You're absolutely right, and that's one thing that he also goes over in the book. Like, if you're making 20 calls and getting 18 no's, but you got two yeses, why are you stopping when you're on fire? Like, why are you
Yeah.
stopping when you're on your game, right? Like, keep going. You're not at your goal yet. Like, let's go.
In the let's go, again, I don't want to keep, harping on this point, but I'm hoping this is what you mean. The let's go is let's get some more no's, not
Yeah.
yeses. That's the key. The reason why people don't prospect is because they do the thing and they don't get this outcome that they want, that they want. It's because they're attached to the wrong thing. So it's let's keep going. Let me get some more rejection. I've always said, and then we're going to move on to questions, that the amount of rejection that you get daily reflects in what you earn annually.
Mm.
It's a direct correlation. Those two things are so directly tied together. The amount of rejection we get daily reflects in the amount of income we earn annually. All right. So first question's from Kyle. Kyle says,